We'll see how the audio is here, but as part of a day in the life of a chemical engineer, or rather a manufacturing engineer is my job title. Today is Sunday, February 6th, I think. Man, time's really flying. But I am driving into work. I got called this morning while I was actually prepping a lesson for, I don't think I've told you guys yet, but at my church, my current job or calling or volunteer position is that I lead the music singing time for the kids 11 and under. So I was prepping for that, looking at lesson plans and songs to sing and games to play with them, when I got a call saying that some things at the plant were running suboptimally, meaning that they were off. So without going into many details, they needed me and my mentor, he was actually the one that called me, to come out and support, to get things back online. So we'll be working with electricians quite a bit to get everything powered up and on, and then we'll be doing our stuff on the control side to make sure all the logic and automation gets put back into the correct state. We're also going to be working closely with operations to make sure that all of our specs and things are kept in line, because the products we make are made to specific specifications. Yeah, that was a lot of spec words in a single sentence. Then we are, you have to know when you are out of tolerance from that, and you have to have basically proof that it has undergone the correct process. And so because some of our systems were offline for a little while, and I don't think we had any sort of data collection, we can no longer accurately verify if we were under those conditions, and so that means our product was out of tolerance for that time. So making sure that operations know, okay, how much longer do we need to run this process? We can set the timers correctly, so it should all still run automatically like it usually does. But yeah, so we're going to be doing some of that. We'll be checking out everything, and then we're also probably going to do some troubleshooting at why our backup systems didn't function properly. So hopefully that isn't too much to share, and hopefully the audio here is good. But I'm just driving into work, so you can see these are the mountains on the west side of the Salt Lake Valley. I think, are they part of the Oakers, I think is what they're called. But yeah, so I'm just coming through. It's about a 40-minute drive, but when I get called in, one nice thing is that drive time counts as work time or billable time. So during the week, your commute is just part of it. You have a job, you gotta drive to it, but when you get called in and you log how many hours you worked over the weekend, drive time counts. So yeah, having to drive 45 minutes each way really sucks, especially if something bad is going on at the plant. But also, it's kind of nice because that means it's like an hour and a half of paid time where I'm not even on plant. So, a typical call out like this, they've happened a few times. If I'm on plant for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, I get 4 hours of billable time that I can hopefully flex. So later this week on like Thursday, I'll probably work a half day and flex the time I just did right now. So that's what's going on today, and I will give you an update when I'm on my way home maybe, and if the audio is good, and let you guys know how long I was here, how it went, what I learned, and let you see what it's like to be an engineer that happens to be on call with the production schedule all the time. Thanks. I'm trying very hard to make sure there's no footage of the plant in the shot here, so I think everything whited out pretty good by the sun. But this is what it looks like when you're on plant. So I got safety glasses, got the smock on, so it's not full-blown coveralls, it's just a smock. So I think it's FR, fire retardant, which is the main safety thing it comes with. And then you see underneath, I'm just wearing like a long sleeve shirt. Especially here in this particular manufacturing facility, it's really important not to have what they call FOD, foreign object debris. And so that means that you have to, nothing with buttons. I'm supposed to take my ring off, my watch off, anything loose when you're in certain areas of the manufacturing floor, because otherwise that can get in the process and cause really big issues. So I get to wear t-shirt, or I get to wear a regular shirt and jeans to work every day. And if I'm in the office, it's pretty comfortable. If I'm out on plant, I got to put this stuff on. But overall, it's really not too bad. And then, of course, a mask because of COVID. And, we're a company of more than 100 employees, so we're under that mandate for the moment. But, yeah, so that's what it looks like while I've been out here today. I've been wearing this and walking around kind of doing some troubleshooting. I'll tell you guys more about it in a second. Alright guys, so you can now see the majestic Wasatch Front of the Rocky Mountains, which means I am on my way home. So this call out was what I would call the quote-unquote ideal call out, and what I mean by that is I do have to drive an hour and a half total, and so you don't want it to go out there and have it be a 10-minute issue, because then you kind of feel like, man, why'd they even call me out? And on the other hand, you don't want it to go too long. So all told, it'll be about a 5-hour commitment for this call out, which means that basically one day this week I'm going to pick a day and work a half day to make up for it. I have an awesome boss, and the company culture in general at this company in this location is very focused on work-life balance, making sure you actually flex your overtime because they don't pay overtime, so you get it back one for one as far as time off. But it does have to be within the same pay period, or rather the same accounting month. But I'm lucky that they actually let that happen, so that's a really great thing about it. As far as what I did, without too many details, of course, is that there were some systems that were shut down due to some power issues, power bumps, which, we're at the mercy of the local utility. It's the same as when the power goes out of your house, right? You say, well, that was weird. However, we had to troubleshoot some things along the chain. So when you look at the power chain, you've got power coming in, and then on plant you have your backup systems, your generators or whatever it might be, and then you've got a transfer switch between the two, so that that switch gets a signal and knows, oh, the main power's down, let's go to backup generators, or vice versa. So there's the transfer switch, and then there's your universal power supply, which that's just kind of like what's plugged into your wall if you have a UPS that kind of protects you from surges and things like that. And then you've got your various device power supplies, and it routes through the control system and all the instrumentation and electrical power and everything. So there was a problem in that chain, and so we had to diagnose where that issue was, and most importantly, once it was addressed or fixed, get the logic back in place. So one thing I will say as an engineer that's interesting is that operations and maintenance, especially as an entry-level engineer, know way more than you do. So listen to them as far as identifying where in the chain the issue was. We were able to say, well, here's what the control system is saying, these are the things that are faulted, these are the things that are not. But he was the one who said, okay, well, I'm going to check here and check here and check this, and knew how all of that electronics actually worked. So without an electrician, us as engineers are pretty useless. So that's rule number one. It's always, always, always pay attention to your electricians, your mechanics, your other crafts people or trades people. They know so much more about the plant, especially if they're a guy that's been there for 5 or 10 or 15 or 40 years. So he was able to diagnose the issue, and the power bumps actually were passed, and so we were able to get things back up and running on regular power. So then we had to kind of discuss, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to repair the backup system right away, which will take more time? Do we want to wait and repair it until a better place in the process? Which means we're at risk of something happening if there's another power bump. But, if there's another power bump, we're going to go down anyways, and we can just fix it then. And this is important lesson number 2 that I started to learn at my very first internship, and I didn't really appreciate until I became a full-time engineer. But that is that operations is king. And what I mean by that is, when you're in engineering school and you're going to work for an engineering company, you think, oh man, engineers, we're in charge, we run the place. False. So false. Because in the end, operations are the ones who run the equipment every day, and so they know what's normal and what's not. They're the ones who have to do the work, and so they know what they're comfortable with or what they're not. And so in the end, as engineers today, we gave our recommendation for what we think was the best thing to do. But in the end, we talked to the current operators on shift, and we even called the ops manager because of the potential risks, and it was his call. You know, we can recommend until we're blue in the face, but it's his call to do what he wants. There's a really good relationship between ops and engineering at my company, and that's because the director of ops started out as an operator himself, but now he, works in the admin building with all the engineers, and so he's done a lot to foster that relationship well. Other companies, that isn't always the case. In other companies, it can be that operations and engineering are always butting heads. Ops thinks that the engineers don't know anything about the actual process, and engineers are all stuck up and think that ops is just stupid or whatever. But that is not how it's been in my experience at this company, which I think is another thing I'm really grateful for. But yeah, that was another interesting lesson that I think is important for young engineers to learn, or engineering students to learn, is that operations, they own the equipment, they own the process. They're the ones to do the work, put their lives on the line, especially in a situation like this, or their inconvenience on the line. And then lastly, the effects, or what I had to do, me and my mentor, the effects were, like I mentioned earlier, because we didn't have data collection, the control system was offline, we don't have verifiable proof that a process was running under spec. So we do have to make up that time, one for one. That's within the allowable procedure, but that does extend the timeline for this process, and that's something that will have ramifications for other programs and other processes. And scheduling at our plant is a massive undertaking that I don't envy the people who are in charge of it. The other thing we had to do was get the logic back into phase, and that's the thing about control systems. In the end, they're just a computer program, and so it's not very different from your laptop. And sometimes your laptop or your computer will get in a funky place, or will freeze up, and even just Chrome, it's like, oh, it gets all frozen up. What do? You restart it, and that helps fix it. And so we had to basically restart the whole thing, but then because we were in the middle of a process, we had to tell, well, this is actually where you're at right now, and we were even in the middle of a specific phase of the process. So I'd say, well, this is how long you've been doing this phase, this is how much longer, this is what things that are left in the process. So we had to sort of guide the control system to that point where it could naturally follow the same process it always follows. So yeah, it was, like I said, about 3.5 hours on plant, plus an hour and a half driving, so 5 hours total. There was some good troubleshooting, working with ops, working with maintenance, and then working with my mentor on the control side ourselves, getting everything back in the right state, as well as some good discussion about pros and cons of different operating modes that we could be in until we got this fixed, or if we wanted to fix it right away. So that's a little view into the day in the life of a chemical engineer. This is not a typical day, right? Because I normally don't get called in on weekends. I'd say I've been working at this company for 6 or 7 months now, and I've been called in on an evening or a weekend maybe 3 to 4 times. And our department, as control systems, actually gets called in more frequently than other departments. So that's not standard for all people who work in a manufacturing environment. But yeah, it's really not too bad, and I'll get to make it that time. If you're curious about chemical engineering, and that's why you're here, I have a couple of videos where I talk about what school was like, I talk about my internship experience, and I also have a video I just recently put out about how I made it through my toughest semester of chemical engineering. So if you want to hear my study tips and organization tips and things for getting through a chemical engineering degree, I think that'd be pretty useful too, so I'll put links to all of those here. Thanks for watching this, and we'll get back to regular videos the rest of this week. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.